Hello, everyone. This is DJ,
Hello, this is this is Marco.
And Bihao.
and this is CG Talks, a podcast where three 3D artists talk about CG stuff, world, industry, whatever, stuff related and unrelated, digressing to all kind of interesting topics. We hope so.
Yeah.
Let's roll into today's topic, which is modeling,
Yeah, being the next top model.
right, or modeler. So 3D modeling. So anyone who wants, talk about attractive women, this is not going to be this one, but we'll just discuss, vertices, polygons, stuff like that.
Unless you were actually going to model an attractive woman, kind of like that Blender
Yeah,
character modeling tutorial, if you remember.
yeah, exactly. So
But anyway.
yeah, that can be one topic, regarding modeling. But we are going to discuss like the best approach to modeling. So
Mhm.
whatever you're modeling,
If-
is it whether it's an attractive lady or I don't know,
chair.
a stool chair or I don't know, piece of sci-fi equipment
If
for
you're
your
attracted
cyberpunk
to
game.
if you're attracted to furniture, then yeah, I'm sure there is this kind of like thing online. People who are attracted to furniture, like there's every kind of kink online.
oh, that
But-
kind
but-
of attracted.
But
Yeah.
you know, it's actually you can become a top model by getting scanned, and if you will put this model on, for example, TurboSquid, and it's have the top number of downloads, then you are a top model.
You are actually a top model, yeah.
Yeah, and this is like
And
this
you
is
can
how
actually say that.
as nerdy as it gets. This is like
Yeah.
nerdy modeling guy
Yeah.
modeler sense of
Oh
humor.
man. No, but if you think about it that way, I mean, okay, we're digressing already, but I was just gonna say, I mean, imagine if you scanned yourself and you became a hit on Sketchfab and TurboSquid and CG Trader. I mean, all of the Instagram models can basically like eat your dust.
Yeah.
because people are downloading a figurine of you that they're gonna be orbiting, and I don't know what they're gonna do with it, but
Okay.
it's like that's probably the most validating thing that could ever happen to anyone.
Yeah,
You know, what's funny that actually, in theory, there's such a scenario possible that you scan yourself in 3D, you put the model on some repository like Kitbash or something similar, and they use your model for some real movie, and you watch some new, like Alien movie, and you are this guy in the third
You're
row,
this-
sitting somewhere.
Or you're the thing that comes out of the egg.
all right. That's so. I
Those
guess
will
that's
backfire.
we're kind of like arriving at the first thing that we can say, like the traditional modeling, poly modeling from the box or from the default cube in Blender that gets deleted all the time. So, is that really the way that it's done right now? I've seen just like recently the video by CG Matter on YouTube, which was kind of like clickbaity titled "Modeling is Dead."
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, and he was like referring to photogrammetry in general, so like
Mhm.
scanning objects into
Yeah.
3D. And I guess your Marco also did the tutorial about the PIFO HD thing, like the
Mhm, yeah.
algorithm using some kind of neural networks to
Yeah.
recreate 3D.
Oh my gosh, guys!
From-
So also, sorry, but I have to bring this up. I mean, I think this is pretty new. Damn, what was the? Let me just take a quick look at my. Damn. Okay, like just a few hours ago, I came across a site. Crap, I don't remember the name. I need to find it. But so there's Mixamo, right? So people can upload their 3D models to Mixamo, and then they'll be rigged, and then they can target they can retarget any motion capture data from the Mixamo library, and that's amazing. But there's a new service that's coming out now and I think a regular subscription, like the lowest regular subscription is like $8 or something a month. But basically, it's software that allows you to use any camera you have lying around to capture your own mocap in like really well.
Really?
So just imagine like Mixamo, but you can make your own footage. You don't need the equipment anymore.
Mhm.
Wow.
I forgot the name, but like I was just looking at the site and it looks promising. I mean, you
There's
you
a
just you just like you can take a video of somebody doing something from your iPhone, and then it will turn it into motion capture data. And then I think from there you can just retarget that to a rigged mesh
wow.
somehow, or maybe they even do it for you. Like yeah, you download an FBX, with the mocap data. So I think you'd be working with the same format as Mixamo, where yeah, you'll get a mesh with an armature with with the mocap data. Uh,
But is it working in some artificial intelligence way, like this learning, machine learning,
Probably
or
like they're probably it's probably AI that allows them to allows the software to distinguish
yeah?
to yeah, right, to know, like to not be as confused with uh with intermingling pixels the way like you
Be-
would do it now, right? Like I mean that's probably how they're able to do it with like how you are able to do it without needing any equipment.
because like for our art breeder, this is like every work you do is empowering and adding more data to the whole artificial intelligence database of this service. So it's you use their artificial intelligence, their the algorithm which was taught already to some level, but also as
You're
you
teaching
make
it.
your choices. Yes, you upload, you
Yeah.
choose your outputs which you like. It's
Yeah.
constantly learning. So I
Yeah.
don't know if this is
Yeah,
something.
but
Probably.
regarding the automatic mocapping of your mesh and animating it with Mixamo stuff, kind of like related stuff. So automatically making animations of meshes comes down also to having really good meshes
Mhm.
and photogrammetry right now. If you just like leave it like an unpolished 3D scan, it's a hell of a mess in terms of
Oh,
mesh
that's
for
true.
animation, right? So
That's true.
you still need to, I don't know, uh, retopologize it in order to
Yeah.
be nicely deforming with animation.
Yeah.
So
Especially characters. Actually, yeah. So I think we can start with that. Like first of all, I mean we're talking about modeling, but first of all, like is it like should we even bother still? Because is modeling really dead? But yeah, like you were saying, I mean,
No.
I really think that uh like at some point we're gonna go into procedural modeling, I'm sure, and I've actually seen and we've actually shared a link once in one of the other episodes of somebody who made procedural structures. I think
Mhm.
in Houdini, like she would just generate based on a few. She created the framework, and then she was generating
Buildings.
procedural.
There were like
Uh,
some old building, like a mill,
yeah,
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, old buildings, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, it looks like we're getting to a point where, sure, like photogrammetry now, uh, like any normal scanner, for example, will give you some pretty ugly topology. But for example, that whole PFU HD thing, I mean, a lot of people have been. It's meant to be used on actual photos, and I just wanted to push it and try to see what it would do with a crappy sketch. But I've tried it on photos, and the topology that it generates, it will need some cleanup, but but from where it is now, it seems like it's a very good start, and it's probably only going to get better in terms of like how well it's able to capture smaller detail. But the resulting mesh is basically an even quad grid. So you could actually like a lot of people have tried to just upload the result of their captured photo, their converted photo, directly to Mixamo without any cleanup. And uh, I've checked through a few, and the results vary, but overall, the mesh deforms well. Like I've noticed that the ones that look kind of weird are maybe the characters, maybe the photo wasn't like super uh like an ideal photo to use. Like the lighting was kind of, it wasn't very crisp, or the lighting was too like there was too much light contrast in the lighting or something. So you see some people like who made like their own 3D models of themselves that they put through Mixamo, and like they're dancing or something, but they have like crab hands, like they have pincers, because it's just like a blob of of uh of
Yeah, you
of
need
polys.
you need to remember about some rules when you prepare the input. It's like I recently there are those several episodes of the Corridor Crew about it was creating the face. I don't remember this technique, how it's called. It was used with GPU, like deep fake, right? And they also showed that the first episode was like they did pretty good job, but then in the next episode they showed some like more advanced knowledge of preparing a good footage to actually use these tools, because there are some specific situations where this kind of algorithm is kind of confused. So you need to remember about some constraints to keep the input in some constraints to for it to be a good set of data to create the best result.
Yeah. So it's generally it's kind of like a little bit similar to if you're trying to approach modeling yourself. You have to also kind of like follow certain rules to help you not drive yourself into trouble. So good reference is one thing. So if you have to provide good reference for the like machine, for the automated process as well. So and you have to do that for yourself as well.
Yeah,
you're being kind of this artificial intelligence yourself.
But
trying
I don't know,
to model something, you have to have good reference, for example,
right?
For modeling.
I mean, of course, we were talking about like animation, which is kind of PFO HD, but for sure, photogrammetry will have its place. Like even with the level of sophistication it has now, like as long as you're able to remesh it, or even like scans, like scan
but
meshes are
I think
available
we have to
everywhere.
like put one thing clear, that it all kind of depends on what the goal of the model is. Because,
exactly.
So that we were talking about animation specific goal, animated meshes of characters.
Yeah,
this is one specific example of using 3D models. So like generally 3D models are not probably the end goal. They are tools for achieving something else, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a video footage or arc visualization, or I don't know, whatever. There are different usage purpose. 3D printing, that's another area that you can use 3D models for. So that generally different uses require different solutions.
And a different level of attention in certain things. Like I think
like there's for example like in the modeling discussions, there's a lot of talk about perfect topology, for example. Sometimes it's important to really follow the quad topology and the flow of the mesh, and avoiding n-gons. That was one myth that is going on. You have to avoid n-gons for as hell, right? But sometimes sometimes you can get away with them without any trouble. It depends on the case.
My impression is like this n-gon stuff is so in hard surface modeling, for example, 3ds Max, you have a lot of tools, so you can create a model in a very, very elegant way, and it's there are some tools that are like capping. You can use it as a cap at the end, because they kind of create a topology which is then very difficult to modify and work with it. So you can apply this kind of, like, for example, booleans in 3ds Max are crappy. So I would use this kind of booleans based some of the tools at the end if I want to finally have this.
Can you tell me one software which has booleans that are not sucking?
ZBrush.
Yeah.
ZBrush.
Yeah, they're pretty. Their Boolean operations are pretty tight. Add to the fact that you can work with like very polydense meshes, and then you can remesh it after. It's yeah. I've tried it a couple of times, and it's pretty insane. Like the result you can get without really paying attention to topology.
Because they have also this special tool. I don't know how popular it is in practice, but you can use like you can paint the shadow, like you have these views of the image, and it can put together a 3D.
Extrapolate like
yeah. I just seen some general like overview. I've never used it, so I guess if they can pull this off, also the Boolean should be working well.
Yeah.
But okay, so maybe we could kind of narrow the topic, because this is such a huge topic and we can go in every way.
Actually, I think it might be good to start off. Okay, so the idea is modeling approaches to modeling change on a case-to-case basis, and whether you actually have to model or not is case-to-case. So maybe we can talk about like what the some of the situations where some of these cases, because like for me, I'd say that modeling, like really when you say like actual 3D modeling, the main the main goal is to be able to manipulate the topology to serve different purposes, right? So if you're a character modeler, you probably wouldn't model a character like poly by poly anymore. I think almost any character artist would sculpt first and then retopologize, because you need to have the right optimization of you need to be able to localize like density. For example, like the face, there are ways to make sure that like the area of your eyes, nose, and mouth, for example, like you can localize densities in some of the key areas, and then as the loops are going outwards into the cheeks and into the jawline and into the temples and the side of the head, it'll become less dense, and then you'll have to localize more density around the ears again. I mean, all of these are tricks that are learned in the practice of topology. But so like in modeling, you'll be learning how to use topology, but it like what you focus on will depend on what you do. So so character artists will need to know topology mainly for the sake of controlling density, and of course making sure that areas that deform will deform well. But like a hard surface modeler, for example, might be more worried about actual, like how the actual shape is represented by the topology. Like if your hard surface, you probably won't be like, if you had to make a drill, you probably wouldn't sculpt the drill first. You might block it out with some box modeling, but then eventually you're going to have to be creating that shape using pure like modeling tools, using modifiers and some retopology over that, right? And you have to, yeah.
But I was thinking about some common denominators. So, like, what is, I guess, the bread and butter and the first steps of modeling for everybody, and the skills which you can use in every kind of modeling is hard surface modeling, right? This is like the first thing you learn when you, unless you are getting into modeling like from this like 3D scanning and you just like this idea. But But
Yeah.
the traditional tool set of a 3D artist is hard surface modeling, and also, for example, like you said,
I suppose that's true.
like you said, for example, thinking about the topology of 3D scans. If you want to be this guy who is able to take care of the topology of the 3D scan, well, having a good experience in hard surface modeling and creating the topology yourself from scratch is a very good skill. I really
Yeah.
couldn't imagine giving that kind of job to somebody who doesn't have this kind of skills. Like maybe they are very advanced skills and they are at the level of taking the very complicated scanned model and just making it look correct in some places, but to get to that place of what is incorrect and how to fix it, and then you would have to go that way from, I don't know, modeling a chair, I guess, and
Yeah.
then go
And you would have to know like how to uh like how to create, for example, like a circular inset within a cylinder with good topology, right?
yeah.
Like it's those little details that
It also depends on tools, because I saw recently some very cool tutorials of this is like the I don't know how to call it. Like this is like the how is it called, that set of letters in language,
alphabet.
yeah, this is like the alphabet of a hard surface modeler. When you start modeling, at first you just, like I just modeled all. I was doing like tutorial after tutorial. I didn't care what is about, like model a boat, model a boot, model this, model that, because I wanted to kind of like go through these topics and finally master the skill itself of modeling, so I can apply whatever tools I want at some point. So and at some point you get to the place where you are not so much interested in modeling at all. I mean, like the specific thing, but there are very general tutorials about solving some typical hard surface problems, like for example merging two like leading lines to one, or one ending some shapes. And one of them, this is like this problem for hard surface modelers, like you have a ball and now you have to set there some kind of shape. And for example, in 3ds Max, I think there's a problem with taking a ball and making a very simple cut of the ball, where you create a very like a flat surface on some place, and using the typical ball topology with this sphere model, it creates some problems. There are some this kind of like very abstract modeling ideas, which at some point you also master. There are very cool tutorials out there, just for somebody who would do architectural visualization or is not very much into 3D. This is like black magic. This is like,
I guess, because
you study the form itself.
And I think there are some problems, at least for beginners with modeling, that it's pretty hard to understand why there are problems ahead when you're modeling with these tools like Booleans, for example, and stuff like that. People tend to not get why math topology really introduces problems in the computer graphics. And that comes down to understanding how the 3D world is represented in the 3D software. It comes down a little bit to geometry and mathematics, because we are all dealing with triangles here anyway, because the triangle is the only kind of like it's the only surely one surface figure. If you have a square, then you have like 4 points and they don't have to all be on one surface, right? So you can do that exercise when you have 4 points and just move 2 of them on the z-axis, right, and move them up, for example, and you still have a face, really, a square face, but it's not really flat anymore. It's like 2 triangles already, and it's giving a hard time to the computer, to the algorithms and stuff like that. So there might be issues when you're dealing with more complex geometry, and it all comes down to how algorithms handle this strange corner cases of geometry.
I guess to put it a little more simply is like your your primary concern, I guess, is to be able to create a shape. But then beyond that, you're going to have to be able to make sure that uh, you have to like set certain contingencies in place to make sure that or precautions to make sure that it will actually look like the shape that you want it to look like. And some of the
Yeah.
problems that DJ
And sometimes you have to
mentioning
think ahead. What are you going to do with the shape that you're making? Because
Always.
you have to think that sometimes it's the shape just a step in the way, and then you have to change it.
Yeah,
That's
no,
where
but I mean,
also kind of
you know what I mean?
planning
It's like
with
you can
topologies.
sketch something, and then let's say you're really good at making orthographic sketches, so you make a front and side view sketch, and you're practically tracing it. Even if you manage to nail the shape, you have to worry about like, oh, but when I need to make, I'm gonna zoom in on this shape, and I didn't give it enough. Like the silhouette is getting chunky up close. I need to subdivide it, but when I subdivide it, my little circular indenture is not a perfect circle anymore. Or oh, like the surface is like there's this weird discoloration on the mesh. Like so. I mean, those are like your surface normals can get jacked up. Like subdividing, which is like a key element in just using any 3D software, really, can also mess up your mesh if your topology isn't right. And I think that's sort of the black magic part also. Is like you have to understand how how these faces are sewn in a way to create the shape, but also make sure that it holds up in all of these different conditions.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, did you learned modeling? Did you went to this process that the more models you did, the less time you spent modeling, and the more time you spent planning the actions before actually starting modeling?
I brute forced it. Like I think the first time I tried, and yeah, to be honest, it's maybe wasn't the best thing, but like the first thing I ever started doing was like characters, and
Uh-huh.
but these really, like, my first characters were literally like two cylinder, like a cube, and then I just kind of made insets for the arms and the legs, and just extruded the arms and the legs and subdivided. Like they were horrible, like the freakish potato things. But
Mhm.
but I that was sort of like the reason I took 3D was because I wanted to make animations, but if I
I
were to
get.
draw that, right, like it would.
I guess that would be nice. It's a pity that it's a podcast and we can't show images. Maybe in the links, right? We can leave
Yeah.
links to our audience to see. I think that it would be a nice episode if we kind of like do the
Roast.
our first our first 3D work. I don't know if you have your
I don't know
archive
if I have it
somewhere,
still,
but at least some
yeah.
of the first my first 3D artwork reveal, and where I'm
Yeah.
at right now. I think I
Yeah.
have somewhere on my drive like one of the first 3D works I made, and it's.
I think I might actually have like a full
It's
animation.
it's an ArcVis, yeah. I did an ArcVis artwork, and it's it's
yeah.
awesome. It's so
Yeah,
freaking awesome. I still love it. It's
Well,
So,
anyway,
clunky.
I
Uh-huh.
was no, because I was thinking that at some point I modeled a lot of hard surface stuff to, for example, bathrooms. So a lot of sinks, stuff like that, and I noticed that. So basically, one of the best approaches is like you learn by your mistakes. So the first thing you would start, model, you would rush straight into modeling, and at some point you notice that it's very difficult to go back when you go into details. So it's good to start from bigger features and go to smaller
Oh.
ones.
You mean-
Save
okay.
save a lot. I mean, do a lot of saving, and also at some point it's okay. You made a mistake at some previous stage, and now you have to go back. And I noticed that I never planned it. It was never my intention. I never thought it through. But naturally, at some point when I had another sink to model, it was like I was sitting, looking at this shape, like the photo, and in my head I was thinking, okay, I'm going to do this, then this, then this. And this, and this, and the more models I did, that process was longer of thinking in my head what to do, and the process of modeling was shorter. So
yeah, and it's also I think it's kind of a little bit down to also the undestructive workflow type of approach. If you use a lot of modifiers and think to add up on this the structure of modeling that you can get back to any step with the modifier stack, for example, and you can tweak stuff, and it's a little bit like a step forward towards procedural modeling.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
it
thinking
is procedural.
It to some extent, you can do something in this kind of like workflow. You can do some things by hand and some things like with the modifier stack, for example. And
yeah,
but like full procedural is like fully, just setting up the rules, right?
yeah.
So it's a kind of like more like programming. But we'll get to that. But I'm thinking that what you, Andrew, said is kind of like it's kind of like pre-planning this kind of workflow, really. And
because you can, like, for me it was I think that was the most satisfying part, that pre-planning in my head, because I could see like some problems. Okay, I solved that problem in my head. I'm going to do this. And at some point, okay, so I'm starting modeling. It's kind of boring. I have to execute all these actions I planned. At some point, there are some details which I make decisions like in the reality. But to solve the problem from this box to the final thing, I have to at some point plan it. And it was because it's if you do this in real time, then you can quickly go in some places where you have to basically,
start from scratch.
Yeah, start from scratch, or start from some stage,
or load the previous iteration.
When I was like doing some kind of like trials or of doing some kind of a more complicated model for myself, like at least last year, I found myself like doing this, copying the object to another copy, just leaving like half-made copies all across my scene, and like not saving in files, but in the same file, like doing like the next version copy next to it, just to be able to get back to where I left off, right?
Yeah.
If it goes wrong, so like doing it in stages.
Yeah, I do that too.
A good habit of saving.
Which is why
if you're experimenting, if you don't know what you're doing, because when you're exactly know when you have the thing preplanned, you maybe not in the need of that, but especially if you're experimenting, like going into unknown lands of modeling, that I think it's helping, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like your own personal undo system.
Yeah. But but that's the thing. I mean, I think modeling, like, it's highly technical. I mean, the whole the process of doing it it's very technical. Like, the skill isn't even in really or like the art isn't even in really how you subjectively interpret something. Like, I mean, and I'm just talking about modeling, not like creating in 3D, but just like the act of modeling. It's not like
solving a puzzle.
Yeah, it's pure problem solving, and the artistry is in the creative solutions you find in solving those particular problems, because you can solve like a modeling problem in many different ways, right? And then it's when you figure out a way to do it in 3 steps instead of 5. I mean, that's an art.
But then it's also kind of like a tool for you if you have like the skill set for modeling things, like representing things from real world and just doing this correctly with a lot of tools that you have in your 3D DCC. Then you can also use it for the creative part if you're kind of like using 3D for the design part, right? So for like concept arting,
of course,
or just rapid prototyping or whatever. So this might involve like artistry and creative part, but you first have to go through
hard surface.
But first you have to just learn how to use this tool set.
Yeah, and you're aware of the scope of like shapes you can model. Like, for example, for Archviz, I felt very long time very like I knew what I can model. I knew what I can't model, because on some level at least, and that was like my area of insecurity. So I worked with the intention to have in control all this kind of stuff I want to model. So, for example, I wouldn't like to use some ready models because I'm unable to model them. That was I thought, okay, this is very bad. I mean, at some point, this is like at some stage, it's a good idea, but this is very bad practice. And I would like to use ready models because I don't have time to model them. It's easier and cheaper to buy them rather than put some ready models there. Because I mean, as a career wise and like your skills wise, and not being dependent on 3D models, only just using them to speed up the workflow. So that was my approach. Also, I noticed that there are some guys who are professional 3D modelers, and I think that this is talent itself. I remember that at forums I seen a question. There was a guy asking this kind of question, like this very common sense understanding of art. This guy asked a question: I have no talent, can I be a 3D artist? And what he meant was he doesn't have this very artistic flair, talent for painting or for stuff like that. And actually it was Tomasz Bagiński who answered him and said, okay, there are a lot of works in the pipeline, so we can do everything, but I think that modeling requires certain talent, because I also talked with like my brother who's he draws great, and he was very interested in 3D, like watching 3D, like, okay, look at this, look at that. And I said, well, if you like it so much, why you won't try 3D? And he said, no, this is not my thing. I don't understand it really. Like, this modeling is too technical, it's too precise. And so I realized, well, I thought that this is just a skill, but also it requires some kind of talent to figure out this kind of stuff. And then I work with some guys. Like, talent is one thing. I work with a guy who was ready to think on such a level of solving the problems with topology in everyday work that I could only copy his solutions. It was like there are those key places in the model which are sometimes difficult, where you have not very dense shape, not very dense mesh, and choosing the right topology in terms of, for example, like which point connect with which one. So when you apply like this turbo smooth or this kind of stuff, it's going to create the good shape you want. And when you operate on this very some key, like some joints of the geometry, which very often create some, it's difficult to create exactly the shape you want. It's like you have to create a very complicated shape with the turbo smooth. Because I'm talking the 3D Smart language now, but based on a very simple topology like this base mesh. And this guy, he worked on some other level than me, when I already thought that I'm pretty good with that. And this is one of the things that helps a lot with hard surface modeling. I mean, you can do a lot of tutorials, you can do a lot of freelance work, but one of the best ways to really learn it is to become a part of the team where there are real deadlines, and there are like hard deadlines. Like every model is calculated, the modeling time is calculated based on money. So I worked for some time in such a very short time, such a company where basically it was calculated and it was presented to me. Okay, you have to make these models within 30 minutes, because if you don't, then it is not good business for us to hire you. We would prefer to prefer to take extra hours to do it ourselves, and this is going to be better deal for us. So it was like, okay, so I worked in some places before where I was thrown on this deep water. I knew that, okay, this is going to be hard and it looks impossible, but if these guys can do this, I can do this as well. So it was hard at first, like first weeks, and then I started to model much faster. I would never even imagine that I can do it that fast. But also there was a team of guys who, for example, one of the things that when you model in a professional environment is that you need to not only model a thing that when you render looks good, you also have to model a thing that you can give away to another artist and he can modify it. So these meshes cannot be like somebody takes your mesh from you and he thinks, okay, what the fuck is going on here? Like how I'm going to make it bigger or wider. And so there were these very, very clear guidelines how the model should look like, so other guys can quickly modify it. And there were guys who had very high skills, and they were constantly teaching you. So basically, they were like every 20 minutes, 30 minutes checking your mesh, like how we are doing that. And okay, don't do that this way. We are using a lot of time. And that was, I mean, it was like you could learn in 1 month or 2 months stuff which you would normally learn for years or never learn. So this is like, this pressure is a very good way if you want to be a very good modeler. It's with everything. Like, get yourself in the environment of guys who are very good at this, and there's a pressure for you to match their level as quick as possible.
But just remember to take some really cool vacation after some period of time, just not to burn out.
I mean, this is not in that terms. I think that it's easier to burn out when you already meet that level and then you're just grinding. But the level of learning, the time of it's very stressful because you don't know if you will drop out from this job. But before that, I worked in the company as a CAD draftsman, let's say.
Yeah, but generally, that knowledge sharing thing that you mentioned is a very, very good advice if you can, share if you're in a kind of like a different environment, maybe not in an office with some experienced artists, but there are a lot of other ways right now. Like active online communities where people share, tips and tricks. That's also a good way, just if you have a problem, throw in this, into communities as well. You can search for answers. So much ways to just not. And also, like I've heard a podcast talking a little bit like a related topic about this, that people right now, because there are so much ways of also learning and getting the solutions at once, they are right now expecting that that everything is like on a click, and sometimes you need to take time as well to also experiment yourself and find out on your own mistakes. Like, of course you can boost with some help from others, but sometimes it's it's a good way of learning as well to just get into trouble yourself.
Yeah, but the traditional apprentice, when you would be like, for example, a guy who, I don't know, works in wood, you get to the workshop, and there are guys who are very good, and they just, have a look at what you do like every several minutes at first, and you just pick up everything from them, and there's a real stress, real constraints of time. So I think this is, I mean, for me, when I was in such an environment, I learned pretty quick, and actually this is how I felt the first day at farming at GarageBand.net. Like, first day talking to five person at the same time overlooking like three different statistics. It was tough, and reading logs, like I would never read all those logs in before. And now, like after years, it's like the first thing. Like, I love logs. There's so much information there that can make my life and work easier. So that pressure is helping, I think, a lot, and learning from guys in real time who are better than you. So just wanted to point it out that this is, I think, this is like this in Matrix, that pill that you, that wire you connect to your head, and you just download all the experience. It's making it much faster. And I even got like a feedback from customers. I modeled already for some guys who were making architecture visualization, and I got like feedback. Thank you very much. This is all, and by the way, very good work. This is very detailed and very nice mesh. I showed that mesh to these guys, and they said, you have to work on your topology, because we cannot use these models in our workflow. So I think it's a good approach. And in general, it's like, also I noticed one thing, that if you would like to give advice to somebody who's learning modeling, there's a completely different set of advice for beginners and for advanced people, because I remember at some point I tried to figure out how this mesh smooth, turbo smooth works with geometries, like like analyze it. And there is a rule to that, right? You have perpendicular angle two surfaces, and when you apply one iteration, it adds first it divides the mesh once to half, and the second thing is that it kind of curves all the angles, and it's like also it's kind of dividing it by half. So I just wanted to, at some point went to some solving some hard surface modeling problems, and I wanted to know what's the theory of it, and I couldn't find it, so I was kind of adding it myself. And so I was very proud of myself that I figured out how the turbo smooth actually mathematically more or less works. Like what's the underlying algorithm for it. And then I took some guys who I taught modeling and 3D, and I was so proud of this idea that I figured out, that I thought, okay, I'm going now give it to them, so they have it like on the table, and they will be so happy that they got it from me. They don't have to figure it out themselves. There was zero affirmation and zero appreciation for this.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So there was zero appreciation for that, because there was not on that level of learning. It was boring, complicated, and too theoretical. And I've seen some guys I taught 3D, which they wanted to be an architects. They don't want to go so deep into the theory of modeling. And but after some time, if they go into ArcGIS and they work a lot with models, they would appreciate how they would have to figure out this kind of stuff themselves.
Yeah,
so
at first you just want to use SketchUp to just do some blocks, walls, cut in and throw in some ready-made models and press
Boolean
render.
is a fantastic option. When you start it, you think, wow, there's a Boolean, why should I do it in a different way? But then after some time you realize that this is
if you want what the Booleans are capable of, you can watch the great great tutorials from Gleb Alexandrov, who made like a series, I think.
He
videos,
actually
the modeling problems from hell or something like that was titled, right? Related to Booleans, right?
So actually part of it is software-wise, because I noticed that, for example, there were some typical problems for modeling in 3ds Max, which were very easily solved with the tools of Modo or I've shown in Blender, just some kind of specific
there are some
shapes.
slight differences,
But in the Gleb, actually, I'm going to add. This is going to be added to this video. Gleb Alexandrov, right? Or
right.
If I'm correct, he made this video 20 approaches to modeling in 20 minutes. So if you would like to see the whole landscape of modeling, what is modeling about, this is fantastic video, and it's very up to date, very current. And you have really those 20 different and types and subtypes of modeling, and hard surface modeling is only like one chunk of it.
So then you have a lot of like organic stuff, like fabrics. That's tricky. That's a tricky area, and there's a huge pool of procedural modeling, and I think that can be kind of like we can scratch it and then do another episode on that, because once we start discussing this Houdini stuff,
but
magic.
The truth is, I don't know, I mean, to say just one thing about procedural modeling, I mean, essentially it's like it may not necessarily even be as I think like there's an impression that procedural modeling will be like more easier, because obviously it would be more forgiving, but unless you're literally just like scrolling through dials for like house, duck, boat, angry Viking. I don't know. I mean, unless you're actually
feral dog.
a
from the,
viral dog.
Bubbles of Pebbles.
unless you're actually like moving through presets. I mean, if you had to create like the if you had to create a rule set to be able to model a shape, and you were creating that rule set from scratch, that's also very that's a skill set in itself, I think, and it can be something that could challenge even the most like competent traditional modeler. I mean, it really depends on I think there are many approaches to realizing like form, I guess, in a 3D space, and I'm sure like I to go back to the whole talent thing, like if anyone is listening now who's thinking about it, don't be afraid, because um talent or not, like it can be learned and you can get good at it, and you'll probably, because there's so many ways to go about doing things, you'll probably find the way that works for you the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, come on down and get
And
your
it's going to be hard surface modeling.
yeah.
But DJ, you showed us these videos of the tool, the procedural modeling in Blender, and I watched some of them.
The new add-on, the Sorcar, right? The Sorcar add-on. There are some other stuff also for Blender, for like Sphere Chalk.
But
I think like also procedural modeling.
I can imagine, like, I could see like this guy create all that kind of fantastic shapes with several clicks, and I think that you can animate them easily with some MoGraph. So this is great for some music videos and stuff like that. But can you create like a coffee machine with these tools, like from scratch to end?
In Blender?
Yes, in
Sure,
Blender.
Probably not yet.
Probably not yet, but maybe in the future. Like I haven't, this video showed just like a simple demo of basic stuff. But I guess if you like work hard on creating the node setup correctly, you probably could. But maybe it's a bit hard. I've seen like basic modeling tutorials for Houdini as well. And it seems like you start really from scratch, from basic primitive geometries, and then you create more sophisticated stuff just using like bigger node trees, and then you just modify it along the way. So it seems like sophisticated, but it comes down like it's a little bit like this procedural texturing stuff. Like if you start watching it first, it seems like black magic because the node setup seems to grow very long, and it's like programming. You just do chunks of it and then plug it into a bigger tree, and it's all convoluted. But it comes down just like when you're modeling by hand. It's really also like you're first like you're doing the maiden shape and then getting into details. So you're doing stuff by hand, but in the procedural workflow, you kind of like approach it the same. It's like just like breaking it down into smaller pieces and trying to connect it together. And it's hard. Like for sophisticated model, like you mentioned, like a coffee machine, it seems like maybe it's not very efficient to really try to model it with a procedural workflow, because where it really pays off if when you really want to repeat it many times, right? So that you create this one node setup, and then you have the benefit of just changing a small slider, a value input, or a seed or random seed applied to this, and you get another variation of this automatically. That's a really big benefit of procedural workflow, right? I've been around doing plants with a Plant Factory, for example, application, and it kind of like allows you to create just a node tree of some rules, parameters and stuff, and then you set up a shape of a tree or plant or whatever, and then you run it multiple times and you create multiple variations of the same kind of species of plant, right? So that's the real benefit of this kind of workflow. I don't know if coffee machines fall into that, but maybe if you do that cleverly, you can just have a nice design line for coffee machines, right? For yourself. I don't know if it pays off, because the modeling time, like the creation of this graph of this set of rules, takes a lot of time. Like it's more time consuming usually than just like modeling by hand. Well, maybe there are some Houdini magicians that do it really, really fast. Perhaps,
Now,
yeah.
I get where it's the strong part, because I could imagine creating some very crazy shapes which can only be created in 3D, like for some videos, and they are animated. So I think this procedural workflow.
Yeah, and that's also for experimentation. So like, for example, like the Mitch Sinave, the Mantissa artist that uses Blender for like crazy MoGraph animations, and he's doing like broken geometry stuff with characters and different experiments with geometry, and he's like applying a lot of modifiers, throwing in particles, a lot of procedural stuff there, and just doing like experiments with it. What comes out of tweaking these? It's like a musician. When you're a musician and you have a lot of electronic tools and stuff, and just playing around with this sliders. I don't know.
Yeah,
and you're just trying out what comes out of it, right? So like it's a nice experimentation tool, also a design tool, right? People are doing new stuff, right?
Yeah, there's
new forms with that.
This category of animations, 3D animations like Houdini and around this kind of things, procedural, creating all kind of crazy stuff, which show. So this is this world of shapes, which was never possible to create in another way than 3D. There are this kind of animations.
Yeah, it reflects in architecture as well. Like people are using this kind of mathematical rules for creating architecture right now, and it's kind of like sometimes taking also into account like some, I don't know, laws of physics or whatever, and you plug it into a procedural thing, and it creates the model for you. And you just play around with these basic settings. It's like growing your buildings really with a set of rules.
I actually had this kind of connection in my head to the Sagrada Familia and this kind of architecture. But I guess now it's so, because of the computers, you can create more. If you want, you can create more. How to call it? Organic architecture, where the forces are led in much more precise way, similar to to plants. And so I guess this is like the whole area of shapes and of solutions. Yeah,
I guess we kind of went to. With this episode, we just shown how big this whole like modeling
I got
word is. It's so big. Yes, it's so, we try to keep to the traditional modeling, poly modeling, hard surface stuff. But when you really think about it, it's a vast world of 3D forms, right, and different ways of creating them.
But if you'd like to define, just for the sake of I don't know, putting together some theory behind the practice and experience about modeling. So what is modeling about? So like, what would be the simplest definition of modeling? So it's like you create a volume of data, of shapes, which you need to create all other stuff you want in 3D, right? So that would be the definition of modeling. I know that's like obvious, but at least for me, I like to find this kind of like,
creating the geometrical representation of 3D forms in your 3D virtual space, right?
Yeah,
I would call it that way.
I think for me, it's creating a representation of a form with geometry in 3D space that will work under various conditions within that 3D software space. Like I think that would be the most holistic definition for modeling I can think of.
Right.
I think.
Right. And if you're really in the need of some nice 3D models, you can go check out our 3DB library, and then you can. I think it's also a quite nice learning tool, because you can see some really nice and good topology models there.
Mhm.
Our modelers team did a really nice job on optimizing them and making them with real good topology. So I think you can learn some stuff downloading the models and examining how they are made.
I think one thing I'd like to kind of advertise about those models is their normal smoothness is perfect. The topology is quad oriented, and I know we didn't really get to talk about that, but let's just say that they will subdivide really well. If you had to smoothen them up with like a turbo smooth modifier or any subdivision modifier for your 3D software, they will subdivide perfectly. And and they look great. The shapes are really nicely, really like kudos to Emil and Jacek. Really, really great 3D modelers.
By the way, the first iteration of subdivision is showing that if it's going great, then it's rather not going to create problems in next subdivisions. But of course, sometimes you can kill the problems with the number of subdivisions. Sometimes it's possible. Sometimes you can just apply.
Kill?
Well, kill. Like, sometimes it is possible to add another one iteration of subdivision and to kind of smooth some problems. But of course, not every time.
No. But I mean, like, I can say for these models, a lot of attention was paid to holding edges. They were made to make sure that you wouldn't really need to subdivide them more than a couple of times to begin with, but if you wanted to, every component that has a risk of deforming has been kept in place with a good distribution of edge loops around. Anyway, I think this is something that we'll if we ever do another episode, we'll probably go into holding edges and
it would be great.
Yeah, like why the different ways to kind of make sure. So anyone listening now, I guess a basic who's curious, a basic explanation would just be that let's say you have a cube. If you subdivide, if you apply a subdivision on it, conventionally you'll get rounded edges, and maybe for models, for a lot of models, what it will do is smoothen out some of the sharper areas, or the more to just kind of clean up the silhouette to make it not low poly, but then hard sharp angles are going to be rounded down. For example, like that cube will look with enough subdivisions, that cube's going to turn into a sphere. Actually, with just a few subdivisions. So you're going to need to be able to smoothen the cube but retain the shape of the cube. You need to add like an edge around certain areas of the cube that will hold the shape as it's being subdivision.
This is very difficult to explain it in podcast.
You know what?
When you have 30-second basic tutorial, right?
Yeah.
About how this modeling, you get it.
Honestly, I think if we go into the technicalities of it in a podcast, it would just If we're going to do this next episode,
let's not go that way. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of like we can like end it saying that probably modeling is not dead. Like, it's still going to be needed.
No.
And I think that the very, very interesting part is like how much of it will be done by hand and how much not, because like it seems like the procedural part is getting more and more interesting to more people.
But I think I think it doesn't even matter, like its usefulness. Like I don't think like being obsolete is even an issue really, because like we were talking about earlier, like people have actually begun to consider it as an art form in itself. Like people
science,
actually
like
kind of just show off their
scientists
topology.
don't make discoveries to create something useful, which is very common like idea of science. Well, with this discovery, if I cannot create some useful stuff based on this discovery, then that discovery is not. It's not. I mean, there's no point to discovery, and science is not about that. Science is about discovering the stuff for the sake of the knowledge and understanding the world, right?
Yeah.
And so many of these like branches of modeling are actually new science discoveries of mathematics, right, of geometry,
Right.
so for maybe they will be useful in 300 years or never, or but this is like I don't know, the Pythagoras triangle or anything like the discovery itself. Like.
Yeah. Besides, I think that I mean, we've seen enough advancements, for example, in our time, right? Like from let's say pure poly modeling in the 90s to or I don't know what came first anymore, but you can model with polygons, which is what we've been talking about so far. You can also model with curves. Some people argue. I remember like one Blender conference, people were talking about
NURBS.
NURBS and curves. You know, how like you can put like you can put 3 circles together in a you can put them on top of each other with some distance vertically, and then with varying sizes you press a button and they become lofted into a vase. Like there's that way of modeling too.
Actually in Rhino, for example, tools in Rhino are more parametric, and also
Rhino is purely it's purely
for design.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and also and this is because they have to be very precise. I remember some.
Because NURBS were invented for the sake of I think aeronautics or something like that, like where you needed pure like technical precision for that. It was for some kind of like military calculations or stuff like that, and very technical. I think for aviation or something like that.
Now it's for sinks. I
now it's for
seen
sinks.
some. Yeah, I mean the guy designed kind of sinks and stuff like that to bathrooms, and so this is the stuff that can be easily exported to machines that mold this kind of stuff, and it has to be very precise.
Because that's very different from mesh modeling, because mesh modeling is kind of like approximating this shape, right, with polygons really. So curved shapes are not really very accurately represented, and in NURBS modeling you have like the equations, mathematical equations defining your surfaces and stuff. So it's very precise. You can really go down to it's like it's a little bit like pixel graphics to vector graphics.
Exactly. So some of the printing techniques actually demand vector input. So like 3D, like 3D, for example, like some 3D effects on book covers, stuff like that, they need vector input. So the machines, these CAD machines, can quickly create them from like how was it called? Like this stuff that was drawing, but based on the vector. Okay, I forgot this word. I'm not going to make it harder for you. But automatically the plotter, exactly. So that needed this kind of vector input, right?
All right, guys. I guess we have to land somewhere, so let's land here and let's venture into the vast world. I don't know. Perhaps proceduralism is a nice topic for the next one.
And check our 3D models.
Oh yeah.
And proceduralism is not just like as I've mentioned, it's not just like modeling, but it's also texturing and whatever,
Yeah, they're very good. So we can also backward engineer and so learn. Okay, how was it done? Like it looks so good, texturing and all the stuff. So see you in the next one, guys.
Okay, see you in the next one.
See you around.
Thanks for listening.
And keep modeling.
Yeah.